Welcome to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. We are continuing our interviews of this summer's WSOP bracelet winners. And this gentleman has been on the show before. Why? Well, he finished sixth in the 2017 World Series main event. That was the year that Scott Blumstein won. You may also remember him because when there were 12 left, he had an iconic hand where he pushed all in with pocket eights versus Antoine Saoud's ace four. Unfortunately, Antoine Saoud flopped two aces, but he hit the miracle two outer on the river, and it was such a hand that kind of was sent around the poker world because it was such an incredible, intense moment deep in the World Series main event. Congratulations, obviously, to him in that moment, but now he has also won his second bracelet this year in a turbo event number 12 at the World Series. Welcome back to the show, Bryan Piccioli. Bryan, thanks for joining us here once again on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.
Sure thing, Bernard. Good to see you again.
Yeah, great seeing you too. Of course, we haven't physically seen each other in probably over 2 years now since the last World Series, but the World Series has gone online. We, of course, have started playing live as well, but this online thing has treated you pretty well. Let's go back to last year. You cashed in about 14 of the WSOP, a few of the GG pokers. This year, again, cashing in multiple events. You win the Turbo Deepstack event number 12, and then you win the WSOP circuit main event. That also for 50,000. The bracelet event was for over 83,000. This online thing's not treating you badly, huh?
Yeah, I'm usually not used to getting first place in online tournaments. It's really tough to get the win, and so to have two in a couple weeks span was just so surreal. Because the last few years, it just feels like I grew up in the online realms, and I feel like I got spoiled back when I got used to having winning be easier than it is now, I guess. And it just feels like your average player is a lot better now than they were back then. So it's it's having runs online these days. It just feels like a little bit more exciting when it happens. And so, to just I was just trying to, top 3 or 4 some of these things after, so many 12th, 10th, 9th place finishes in these online events. So many of those in a row hurt really bad. So it's to finally break through and have 2 firsts in a row is just, it was amazing.
Right, because last year, although you had a lot of cashes, unfortunately, there weren't any seconds or fourths, or they were really kind of a lot of 11ths and 14ths and 90ths and all that kind of stuff.
I had the 23rd in the GG main, the 5K main, that was the biggest online tourney of all time.
Right.
They paused it for a week after day 2, so I was chip leader with 38 left for a week, on top of the world. And then once we started back up, things just fizzled right out real quick, and I busted 23rd after being in first. So it's I felt like I probably profited some over the course of those tourneys or whatever, but I was, still really hungry for more and this year with, Wynn and Venetian stepping up with live tournaments at the same time, it was just trying to juggle all these things after, not really doing much for a year other than playing a bit online. So, feels like the poker world's definitely back for sure.
Yeah, let's hope it continues. Obviously, you won 80,000 in that GG. Did you do anything I'm assuming that you were very anxious to get back to playing this WSOP online after your success last year, but like you said, you were just kind of hungry for more because you were that close so many times. Cashing is great, but wanting to get to the finish line. Did you do anything different, or at least work on anything different, or, mentally do anything different from last year to this year as you entered the WSOP.com bracelet events this summer?
I think the only thing was the live stuff was also going on this year. So, you had your normal crew around to, talk hands at the end of the night with, where, yeah, of course you can, we have group chats that, we talk strategy and whatnot, but, it felt like I used to always call like the WSOP or during the summer in Vegas, like summer camp or whatever, you'd see
Right.
all
Of
your
course.
old
Right.
friends. And
Of course.
so this summer kind of felt like everybody, all the guys were back in town. And, so it was kind of like talking more strategy, like more in depthly with like my good core group of like study guys.
Right.
I guess, being in person and being surrounded, and having dinners and, hangout sessions or, whatever. And like, it felt like things were more fine tuned than like last year. It was like, there were just so many games online because everybody was just sitting home and nobody had anything to do. And, people were getting these stimulus checks and
Right.
unemployment checks and all these
Right.
things.
Right.
And it felt like, it was weird. Like once, the day that the checks would come, the games online would be, bigger that day. It felt like, so
Crazy.
it felt like almost like nothing, like you just play as much as you could online and, nothing really mattered. But this summer, it felt like, bigger games live. Wynn, had the big 10K, Venetian had some big stuff. So it was
Right.
like kind of, focusing yourself more on, I guess, quality over quantity as far as buy-ins go. Like,
Right.
last summer it kind of felt like, yeah, just fire everything and, hope the end of the day your account balances are higher than what you started with. But
Right.
yeah, this summer it was more like, making a schedule and planning certain events for certain days and like, oh, there's not really a good Venetian or Win today. Should I just focus on the online event if there was a good online event that day and, take the
Right.
day off from live. So it was like kind of more balancing and fine tuning things more this summer. It felt like, made me kind of focus on maybe end game stuff more often. Like, because I just like these opportunities you just need to take advantage of because they don't
Of
come
course.
around as often as they used
Right.
to.
Right. Right. And so did you find last summer, because literally, like you said, let's take a summer step back in the early 2000s, it was literally wild, wild west. Everyone's playing online. The game was so much easier back then. You played solid poker. You really could kind of tell who was playing well, who wasn't playing well, but everyone has gotten better. We've talked about this so much on our show. For multiple reasons. People just have worked hard. The online game has really kind of become more difficult, especially with the US being banned, Europe really improving. Then on top of it, there are multiple training sites online to get your game better, etc. But last summer, when the pandemic hit, did you feel like there was suddenly a little bit of an influx of people who were a little bit newer to the game or had
100%.
not played? And so
Definitely.
not to say that it made it easier per se that you were able to take advantage of it, but definitely the average player base was a little bit lower, right?
And the average tourney field size grew pretty
Right.
big too.
Right. And it went the other way. Right.
The bracelet events online, I guess there wasn't live, last year. I don't know, but yeah, it just felt like every day I'd say, oh, it's going to get this many people, first we'll get this. It would just blow it out of the water
Right.
like every
Right.
single day.
Right.
But then I kind of had a feeling, I called it. I was like, this money is going to dry up sooner or later. And, slowly people are going to not be working from home all the time. And, on a Zoom call, a work Zoom call, and then have, some ACR tables on the side
Right.
or,
Right.
whatever. I'm sure it's happened. And so like, I think field sizes definitely towards the end of last year, started this year, I think started to even back out to what they were before, but there was definitely a huge boom. I noticed specifically on ACR, where the sites that like are easy to deposit onto and cash
Right.
out off of. So yeah, with
Right.
with WSOP, I mean, you got to be in Jersey or Nevada, and it's got to
Right.
be linked to your bank account or whatever, legit, But ACR, anybody can just throw money on these sites. So
Right.
a lot of people were, hey, how can I play a $20 tournament
Exactly.
online today?
Right.
Messaging their friends, and
Right.
yeah, the games were just exploding.
I mean, because so you have so many people, not just people who played for money, but like even bar league people, and they were just so desperate to play. And if they're like, God, if it's $10, I'll put $10 in. That's what it would have been my buffet ticket anyway. I just want to play. And they were so jonesing to play.
My aunt won a 10-cent tourney on Global Poker for like $90 a couple months ago.
Oh, she must have been ecstatic. That's great. That's fantastic. We are fortunately talking with Bryan Piccioli, who won his second bracelet in the WSOP.com online series. Before we talk about that, you unfortunately were directly related to the WSOP 2020 main event domestic bracket as well. Many of you know Joe Hebert, who was just on the show talking about his Gulf Poker Player of the Year, and also talking about his win at Poker Gras and the WSOP domestic version. Many people, we did talk about this. Upeshka De Silva was unfortunately disqualified in 9th because he tested positive for COVID. And you kind of knew about this well in advance, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was the first to know because
right.
Pesh was staying at my house, and we had COVID together. We went through the whole ordeal together. Everybody on Twitter was saying like, "Oh, how didn't he quarantine? How did he? How did this happen?" And it's like, yeah, of course. Like once he made the final table, we obviously didn't leave the house at all.
Right.
But the days 1 and 2 were Sunday, Monday, I think it was, and we had done a few things in those days leading up to like Thursday or Friday. I think we like went to the driving range, or like went in, like we might have sat at outdoor dining somewhere at some restaurant. But then, we weren't really thinking 2 weeks ahead.
You didn't think he was going to make the final table.
And
so
let's
be let's be clear. Everyone understands that.
Incredible.
No, don't get me wrong. No, don't get me wrong. But
I would have bet
sure
he would make it, to be honest.
So let's make sure everyone understands this. He did the activities that Bryan and Upeshka were talking about. They did this before they even played day 1 of the event. So, and then you quarantine afterward. But from what your belief was,
he made it on Monday night, and then I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. He got out of the shower and he couldn't smell the soap. He looks at me and he's like, "Bro, I can't smell the soap." And we felt pretty all right other than that. And we're like, well, he was already at the final table at this point. Right. So like obviously our first thought was go get tested. And so, there were my wife, his girlfriend, and then us two. We got tested, and his girlfriend, him, and me were positive. My wife somehow faded it. It was negative. Wow. So she had to quarantine in an Airbnb by herself outside of her own house over both Christmas and New Year's.
Oh my goodness.
So like I had to FaceTime with my wife on Christmas and all these things from like 2 miles away, mind you.
Right. Literally, yeah.
So yeah, there was. And then we contacted the WSOP before before any of it was public. Pesh got in contact with like Jack Ethel, and they were there's just wasn't really much that could be done given the the clause when you registered. That's everybody kind of knew. A lot of people sat out the tournament because of this clause, and it's like. I wouldn't say Pesh was he wasn't the tightest with not doing activities, during the pandemic. And it felt like it was just so crazy that like after, he'd done, gone on whatever trip, done all these things, came back. And then the one time where he could not get COVID, we end up getting COVID. And we were fine. We just hung out at the house for, whatever, 2 weeks, and that was that. But it was a pretty down time. Yeah, I mean, I had a piece of his action as well, so it was just a rough one for the team. But he was also at the LAPC COVID delayed final table at the same time that like the WPT from like March before. Right. So it was just like he had been having conference calls with the WPT, every couple weeks on how they were going to arrange finishing out this final table with all these restrictions and lockdowns and stuff. So like, it was just such a crazy era of like that, you know, the WSOP thing and then the WPT thing. And like, but he's just like, he's such a monster on the tables that like, you know, all this stuff, you know, whatever, nothing will stop him. He'll always be a crusher. So yeah,
Right.
he's had some good, he final tabled like a 1K down in Texas recently, and he's always making runs. So
He'll be back.
It was a rough, like, you know, couple weeks, but we got through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on the brighter note, your side, you have this year been crushing it online. As we talked about, you won your second bracelet. Your first bracelet was back in 2013, Asia Pacific 1100 No Limit event. But this one was event number 12 here in the United States during the domestic WSOP bracelet events. And talk a little bit about this event. As you mentioned, it was a turbo event, a deep stack. You know, coming into this, do you feel good about it? You know, how did you feel coming in? Because ultimately, we can talk about the final table as well, but ultimately the final table was a doozy, really to say the least. Really, I mean, talk about the people at this final table. We'll talk about all the players, because 3 people had made a WSOP main event final table before, 3 that were at this final table. And in addition to that, the most successful WPT main event player or champion in history, Darren Elias, former guest as well, he made the final table. So this is crazy I mean, it's probably, when I saw it, it's probably one of the toughest final tables that WSOP.com has ever had. I mean, it's crazy.
Definitely. And if you count the one guy, Ye Yuan, he had final tabled that domestic one that Pesh got. Right. So if you counted him, there was actually 4 main event final tables.
Right. Oh, I thought I was counting him as the third, but yeah, maybe I'm missing.
Michael Dyer was there.
Michael Dyer, and Dan Sindelar.
Dan Sindelar and myself.
Right. Well, you're the 4th one. You're right. But I was mentioning 3 other players. Right.
Sindelar ended up winning the main.
Exactly right. So Dan Sindelar just won the grand finale here online. Right.
Yeah, that was quite the. Yeah, it was a fun day because I was playing day 1 of a Wynn. They had a $500 500K guarantee going on that ended up getting huge. It was like, I think the prize pool hit like 1.5 million or something like. They almost tripled the guarantee. So I was kind of, you know, I was in the swing of grinding these events, you know, whatever live was that day, you know, I'd go play. And if I happened to be at the table when the online event started, you know, I'd usually late register like an hour or 2 in on my phone, or I guess I'd bring a laptop. Like I think for the 2K I played, like I was, you know, focusing on that a bit. So it was on my laptop for that. But yeah, this $500, I was just on my phone for the first, it was a turbo. So Reg probably closed in 3 hours or 3 hours. So I was on my phone playing this 500 at the Wynn. It was kind of a short day 1. Day 1 ended at like 8:30 p.m. So, you know, they draw for last amount of hands in the live tournament. I'm like maybe 20 to 30 left on my phone in the turbo online event.
Right.
So right. And I looked, and it looked like the synced break on 55 was going to be like right when we were bagging chips. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. You know, I'll bag, switch my hots. I had my laptop in my car, the car that I'm in right now.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I'll go on break. I'll connect my laptop to my hotspot on my phone, and then I'll just finish the tournament in the car.
Yeah.
And so from that, basically we played 5 hands, bagged, and then I walked from my car to the parking garage. When I put my chips in bags, I was in dead last place, 20th out of 20, with like 3 big blinds and a small blind. I remember specifically the first hand, I had Jack 6 of hearts in the small with like, you know, a decent chunk of my stack in and the button min raise. So I'm like, with the overlay, I was like, all right, you know, it's a good spot to try and get it in here and triple up. The guy actually had ace 6 of diamonds, and I end up runner. So I'm like dominated, worst case scenario.
Right.
And I runner a flush. Then next hand, suck out again, ace jack to queens, hit an ace on the river. Then very next hand, I had 9s in the cutoff with like 14 blinds. and just shoved, and then Katie Mormon's wife,
Right.
and
Yeah.
won a big flip. So I go from 300K to 3.5 million. And
Yeah.
the break hits, sync
Yeah.
break hits. I'm in second with 14 left. So I'm like, holy shit, I got a shot to win this thing. So I go in my car, I switch over, and I'm just sitting in this front passenger seat right here. And I played the whole final table out in the passenger seat, and end up winning the bracelet in my car in the Wynn parking garage. So that was a pretty cool story.
So all these great stories of Ryan DePaulo winning it in a Whole Foods parking lot.
And I had a similar reaction, I'm king of the world. I like got out of the car. It was probably similar to my reaction when I hit that 8 of clubs on the river.
Right.
Just screaming in front of the parking garage, and I got a few weird looks from people getting out of their car, but they didn't know. Obviously, I wasn't gonna be like, I just won a WSOP bracelet.
That's right.
I was
like we were talking about with regards to this final table. You obviously 2017, and so I mentioned 3 other. You're right, 4 in total. You in 2017, Dan Sindelar in 2014. He finished 7th the year Martin Jacobson won. Then Yi Wan, who finished 4th, he finished in 5th place in 2020, the year that Joe Hebert won the domestic. Michael Dyer finished 3rd in 2018 when John Sin won, and as we mentioned, Darren Elias, the WPT main event king, he finished in 5th place. I mean, just an unbelievable final table, and like you said, Katie Lindsay finishing in 18th place, Negreanu finishing in 62nd, Ryan Reese finishing in 98th. I mean, this was an incredible final table, to say the least.
Sure.
What was the reaction back at home when you take down this second bracelet?
At my house or like my parents' house?
Well, let's talk about your house first, and then we'll talk about your parents.
I actually had Pesh and a few other friends hanging out at home, or he was crashing at my house during the tourney series
right
a few weeks ago, and so like they were waiting for me to get home, and so I just got home, and we just started we didn't go out, but we just stayed up real late, just chatting and celebrating and whatnot. And my wife's pregnant, so
great.
She couldn't stay up too late. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was just a handful of us at the house. But then
I think some people are listening right now saying, like, why didn't you just go home and finish it out? But remember, people, there's a 5-minute break and then it just starts. And so it's not like he lives 5 minutes away, and you don't want to be playing down to the final 20 while you're driving. Right? I think you need to focus a little bit.
I was I had a good setup. I had a drink and had my vape, and I was cozy in the car, so I was it just worked out that way. And then I called my mom, like, I think it was either 9 or 10 p.m. Vegas time. So it was in the middle of the night on the East Coast, and she goes to bed real early. So I called her. I'm like, when she gets a call in the middle of the night from me, she knows it's either really good or really bad.
I was gonna say, and she worried more than
hello, and you can tell she's kind of nervous. Like, all right, what's Mom, I'm in jail.
That's right.
But it was like, Mom, I just won my second bracelet. You're the mother of a multi-time bracelet.
Right. Yeah.
She was real pumped up. She told my dad in the morning, and then I called him the next day. So
what was your dad's reaction?
He was super proud, because I had been like, really grinding the past like month or two before that, like things, a lot of deep runs, but nothing, no top threes. Like I said, these top threes when you're a tourney player are what you really strive for. And so, to get the win was just awesome. And like, I play poker for money. So like, it's, I was, if it was just a non-bracelet tournament for 83,000 on America's Card Room, I still would have been pretty thrilled. But like, to have it, be a bracelet event at one of the toughest final tables too. It's just like, I ran pretty good. I won like a huge hand at the start, and then I the chip leader can just kind of have some leverage 9-handed, 8-handed in a lot of these spots where he's got
especially
a lot of chips,
especially in these turbo events.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And just winning the blinds is like, that's so
100%.
much of the chips on the table is,
100%,
these
100%.
blinds. And so you got, and if Darren, I felt like knew every single time I was raising, like, any two, like I remember like I was opening like 7-4 off, like under the gun, like he shoved on me every single time I took these, like, 8 any two spots or whatever. Get to him and I'm like, he's too good. He knows. Like like I think he shoved on me 4 out of 4 times when I had like
funny.
Real bad hands. So I'm I was real worried about him making a run, but I ended up busting him. So that was
well, and I think that in these turbo situations online, when you get down deep and also to the final table, unfortunately, it's not really that much poker play. It's really, pre-flop play. It's all in call or all in fold, and that's really what it is.
Ranges have to be real sharp in these things,
right.
Especially at the final tables with all the money's on the line, and it's like these BVB spots are like, it's just like. Queen 9 against Ace 4, for all the
and
chips.
They got to hold, and they got to hold. I mean, it's as simple as that. And especially when you get the heads up, after a certain point, you're like, King 7, let's go. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. You're not really happy about it, but we got to go with it. You know what I mean? Like, Queen Jack, Queen 10 might have to go here. Let's go. Whether you're ahead or not, you hope you're live, and if you are, you're 40 a dog, and you hope that it hits you. And that's really what a lot of times what it comes down to.
That's tournaments.
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's really what. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Bryan and talk a little bit about his story with his dad. Many of you may not know that story, but when we come back, we'll talk about that as we continue the 14th anniversary celebration of the Bernard Lee Poker Show.